In 1997, marine biologists off the coast of Virginia documented something that stopped the field cold. A bottlenose dolphin, alone in open water, with the body of a harbor porpoise. The porpoise hadn't been eaten, it hadn't been caught in anything. It had been killed with a precision and force that suggested something the researchers were not prepared to classify. They wrote up the report. Then they argued for months about whether to publish it. The image most people carry of dolphins is one of the most thoroughly contradicted portraits in modern marine biology. Playful, curious, cooperative. The animal that swims alongside boats and rescues drowning humans and communicates in ways that suggest something close to language. That image is not invented. Dolphins do those things. The problem is that the same brain producing all of that also produces something else entirely. And for a long time, the field looked away, scarred with what was actually found off Virginia. The harbor porpoise showed blunt force trauma consistent with repeated ramming at high velocity, internal hemorrhaging, broken ribs, no bite marks, no feeding. The dolphin responsible wasn't competing for food. There was no territorial boundary being enforced. The porpoise was simply dead, and the dolphin had done it with the kind of sustained, deliberate effort that requires intent. Researchers classified it carefully. Non-consumptive aggression. The category existed because this was not the first time something like it had been documented. It was simply the most thoroughly recorded. Between 1994 and 2022, researchers cataloged over 300 cases of dolphins killing harbor porpoises in the North Sea and North Atlantic alone. The pattern was consistent across incidents. Multiple dolphins coordinating. Sustained pursuit, death by blunt force rather than predatory bite. No consumption of the body afterward. The porpoises weren't prey. They weren't competition. They weren't threats. Biologists watching from boats described something that looked structurally like play behavior. The same coordinated movement, the same energy, the same social reinforcement between participating dolphins, except at the end of it, something was dead. The explanation the field resisted for years goes like this. Dolphins are one of the most cognitively sophisticated animals on the planet. They have large brains relative to body size. They use tools. They recognize themselves in mirrors. They maintain long-term social relationships with specific individuals. They hold grudges. They teach behaviors to their offspring that aren't instinctive. All of that complexity, the same complexity that produces cooperation and communication and apparent empathy, also produces something that has no clean parallel in simpler animals. Dolphins appear to experience something researchers call surplus aggression, violence that exceeds any survival function, that exists, as far as the data can determine, for its own sake. In 2013, a study published in Marine Mammal Science analyzed 61 harbor porpoise carcasses found off the coast of Scotland. The injuries were specific and consistent. Rake marks from dolphin teeth, fractured ribs from ramming, hemorrhaging in the muscles and organs. The researchers noted that the force required to produce these injuries was not accidental. It was applied repeatedly, over a sustained period, after the porpoise had already been incapacitated. Whatever was happening, it continued past the point where the outcome was already determined. The same year, researchers working with bottlenose dolphins in Shark Bay, Australia, documented infanticide within dolphin populations. Male dolphins killing calves that were not their own. This behavior has a biological explanation. Removing a rival male's offspring brings the female back into estrus, creating a reproductive opportunity. It is documented in other mammals, including lions and certain primates. It is not random. It is not irrational. It is a cold evolutionary calculation running in an animal sophisticated enough to execute it with coordination and apparent planning. 2 or 3 males working together to separate a mother from her calf. The calf dying from injuries consistent with repeated ramming and biting. The males returning to the mother afterward. Here is where the science becomes genuinely difficult to hold. The infanticide has an explanation. Brutal, but coherent. The harbor porpoise killing does not. There is no reproductive advantage. There is no territorial gain. There is no food. Researchers have proposed that dolphins may be practicing predatory techniques on porpoises, honing skills they use when hunting fish. This explanation accounts for some of the behavior. It does not account for the duration of attacks that continue long after any practice value has been extracted. It does not account for the social reinforcement between participating dolphins. The behavior that looks like play is not incidental. It appears to be the point. What the dolphin data forces into the conversation is a question the field has been circling for decades without fully entering. If an animal is intelligent enough, genuinely, measurably, neurologically intelligent, does that intelligence come with something attached to it? Not just the capacity for cooperation and language and long memory, but also the capacity for something darker, for violence that exceeds function. For behavior that serves no survival purpose, but is pursued with coordination and apparent enthusiasm by animals whose brains are sophisticated enough to know exactly what they are doing. Humans are not the only species that kills beyond necessity. Chimpanzees conduct organized raids on neighboring groups. Orcas have been documented harassing and drowning gray whale calves without eating them. Certain ant species wage wars of extermination. But the dolphin cases sit differently because the animal producing this behavior is the same animal people point to when they argue that intelligence in the animal kingdom is something to be celebrated. The same cognitive architecture that allows a dolphin to recognize its reflection, to remember a specific human face after years apart, to grieve a dead calf. That same architecture is present in the animal ramming a porpoise against the water's surface for the 14th time after the porpoise stopped moving. The researchers who have spent careers on this don't offer a clean resolution. The surplus aggression hypothesis remains contested. The practice hunting explanation accounts for some but not all of the data. What the field agrees on is this: the behavior is real, it is documented across multiple species and multiple oceans, and it does not fit the portrait most people carry of these animals. The portrait isn't wrong, it's just incomplete. And what's missing from it is the part that makes the complete picture harder to hold. The bottlenose dolphin off Virginia in 1997 was not an anomaly. It was a data point in a pattern that the field had been accumulating quietly for years before that incident and has continued accumulating in the decades since. The debate about whether to publish that initial report was not scientific caution. It was something more human than that. It was the reluctance to complicate something people had decided to love simply. What the data shows is that intelligence, wherever it appears, does not arrive alone. It brings with it the full range of what a sophisticated brain can produce. The cooperation and the cruelty, the empathy and the surplus, the animal that swims beside you, and the animal that continues past the point where continuing serves any purpose you can name. The dolphin doesn't explain itself. The data accumulates, and the harder you look at it, the more it resembles something you already know, not from marine biology, from somewhere closer.